When I first played Elden Ring, and I mean within the first hour, I had a terrifying realization. This game is going to ruin my life. Elden Ring builds on the DNA of Dark Souls 3 combat fused with the speed and agility of Sekiro. It has the open, go anywhere and see everything world of Breath of the Wild cranked to 11. We explore relics of a once golden land, overwhelmed by scale and grandeur like Shadow of the Colossus. Oh, and the world's lore was created by George R.R. Martin and my favorite storyteller, Hidetaka Miyazaki. That's too much shit. Those are just too many things that I love. Then I thought, there's no way it can be that good. Maybe the bosses don't hold up. Well, they do. Maybe the world will be sparse and monotonous. It's anything but. Maybe the story will fall flat.
The loathsome dung eater.
Elden Ring is the culmination of the collective talents of the teams that have worked on some of the greatest games from the past 20 years, and it shows. To make the claim that Elden Ring is the baddest to ever do it, I will base my argument on 5 pillars, going from weakest to strongest, so we'll be saving the best for last. I hope you enjoy. Pillar 1.
Stop.
Build variety
Zach,
and
stop.
creativity.
You're gonna get in trouble. Zach, stop. Zach, stop.
There is a cruel irony in the fact that From Software's longest game is also its most replayable. At a glance, the stats like Vigor for health, Mind for FP, Endurance for stamina, Strength and Dex for damage, and Intelligence, Faith, and Arcane for spellcasting all seem like a typical Dark Souls character builder spreadsheet scenario. There are over 400 unique weapons and 200 spells in the game, but that really doesn't tell the whole story of how the game encourages creativity in hybrid builds. While it is absolutely possible to use simple, straightforward character builds that are still extremely effective, Elden Ring encourages the player into a hybrid playstyle with so many weapons requiring or benefiting from multiple stats. That is opposed to, say, Dark Souls 1, where many of the best builds are min-maxed around a few key stats like strength or intelligence. In Elden Ring, many of the best weapons in the game, like the blasphemous God damn it. The blasphemous I can't say that. Blasphemous blade, there you go, have multiple requirements and scaling bonuses. In this case, strength, dex, and faith. In my Hollow Knight video, I outed myself as a strength guy. I'm a strength build guy. I'm a melee build guy. I'm a moron. Morons such as myself saw this slew of weapons when we picked up Elden Ring and probably thought, man, I don't want to put any levels into faith or I'm going to lose my job as a moderator on r/atheism. But therein lies the brilliance of Elden Ring's weapon design. It encourages creative player builds through hybrid weapon and spell synergies. And of course, as I said, when I played the game for the first time, I went straight strength. I don't know how many different ways I can call myself a deprived club purist, but old habits die hard. I made it all the way to Moog on pure strength and adrenaline. Then I traded in the Remembrance of the Bloodlord for Mogwin's Sacred Spear, and I was a little bit pissed. My grafted blade, Game of Thrones-ass sword, only required strength and a measly 14 dex, which you better believe I had min-maxed. But I wanted to use that spear real bad. So I decided to shift gears and go for a bleed build. I became a born-again Christian, hit the minimums for strength and dex, then dumped the rest into Arcane. Then I dumped a few points into Faith. And before I knew it, my build was unrecognizable. I was attacking every encounter with an arsenal instead of the Iron Throne attached to a stick. It was at this point that I realized I had only experienced a tiny fraction of what the game's combat system had to offer. And the beauty of that is that nobody made me. The game didn't hold my hand and make that suggestion. It merely had the possibility and guided me there through well thought out weapon and magic design. On that topic, Ashes of War opens up different weapon classes to most if not all builds. Where traditionally different weapon types were married to their respective builds, the Ash of War system provides flexibility through weapon affinities, allowing the player to choose how weapons scale. Affinities are just the window dressing, however, as the true appeal of Ashes of War lies in their skills. The Lion's Claw provides a massive boost to poise, which I am personally allergic to calling hyper armor, to provide the player a Havel the Tank build on demand. Bloody Slash helps to proc bleed with a masochistic vampiric effect, sapping the player of some HP while unleashing a broad, blood-infused attack that also deals high burst damage. A DLC Ash of War, Swift Slash, is a natural evolution of the Quick Step from previous games. A favorite for PvP, Swift Slash allows players to fire off a shearing vacuum, which slices through enemies as you avoid them in one fluid motion. Elden Ring allows players to change the proverbial software on their favorite hardware, allowing for infinitely more opportunities to personalize a build and playstyle without the need to start from scratch. And everything I've mentioned so far is just dealing with the melee options. Like many of its predecessors, Elden Ring's magic system is generally divided into two categories: sorceries, which are generally governed by intelligence and cast by staves, and incantations, generally governed by faith and cast by sacred seals. Unlike its predecessors, Elden Ring breaks down these two fundamental options into a number of magic schools, each of which tying into a faction or higher power. The brilliance of the magic system in Elden Ring is that nearly every magic build has options to cover different situations. Within the realm of sorceries, the bread and butter are glintstone sorceries like Comet and Glintstone Pebble. These are the most recognizable sorceries that act as a type of quote-unquote pure magic derived from the studies performed at the Raya Lucaria Academy. Efficient, straightforward, and draw their power from the cosmos. For spell swords, the Carrion royal family offer spectral weaponry like Adula's Moonblade and the Carrion Slicer. Renala, Ralana, and Rani use these celestial sorceries. Rocksling and Starcaller Cry provide reliable physical damage alongside significant stagger for magic builds. These gravity sorceries, best utilized by int and strength builds, were favored by Starscourge Radahn, who also used gravity sorcery to ride that little ass horse. For those who prefer to live in death, investing in both intelligence and faith unlocks the full power of death sorceries. My personal favorite death sorcery, Massive Putrescence, has an item description that reads, flings a great mass of putrescence that explodes shortly after impact, raining ghost flame upon the area. Also, Massive Putrescence was my nickname in high school. Plus, you can do this.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bah, bah.
For Filthy Clerics, faith-based incantations allow players to commune with the divine, the primordial, or the forbidden. The purest form of faith incantations are the two-finger incantations, which draw on the power of the gods to perform healing and buff duties. On the opposite side of the spectrum, Blood Oath incantations require an investment in both faith and arcane. Used by followers of Moog, Lord of Blood, which was unfortunately not my nickname in high school, Blood Oath incantations inflict devastating bleed buildup. Other schools of faith-based magic include Dragon Communion, Golden Order, and the Servants of Rot, all of which offer unique benefits to players looking to expand beyond the typical stand back and cast blue magic gameplay.
We're not gay! Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have many gay friends.
My father's gay.
When it comes to build variety and creativity, the last major point that I would like to make is how relatively easy it is to respec and experiment mid-playthrough compared to other titles. It isn't as easy as swapping out your gear to do a Nightfall Strike in Destiny, but it really shouldn't be. This respec and weapon upgrade system is forgiving enough to encourage experimentation, but constrained enough where new builds must be at least carefully considered. There are 18 larval tiers in the base game, and an additional 9 found in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, allowing for plenty of oopsie doodleses as needed. Most upgrade materials are purchasable once the appropriate bell bearings are collected and given to the nice young ladies at Round Table Hold. I feel comfortable making the claim that Elden Ring has more build variety than every other Souls game combined. Between the weapon variety, Ashes of War, and different schools of magic, there is so much power given to the player to roleplay and meaningfully change the way the game plays to their little heart's desire. Pillar 2, a dense and layered world. The first time a Souls game truly clicked with me, and I felt like I really got it, was in Dark Souls 1. I was fighting my way through the Undead Parish, getting my ass slightly kicked by the Fang Boar and sneaky dangerous Balder Knights. I finally made my way into the parish, where, probably in the full episode of Panic Rolling, I noticed the open door at the other side of the nave. I rushed in, and the gate closed behind me. I breathed a sigh of relief as the enemies who were relentlessly charging after me congregated impotently just beyond the gate. The elevator creaked downwards. I caught my breath and prepared for the next fight. Stepping off the elevator, that familiar theme kicked in, and I realized, oh my god, I'm back at Firelink Shrine. Elden Ring, and I did not do the math on this, is about 20,000 times bigger than the original Dark Souls. So there aren't going to be any moments 10 hours into the game where we loop around to the starting zone. Instead, Elden Ring builds that same sense of amazement of the "oh shit, I know where I am now" through verticality and layers within the map. To be clear, there are moments that mimic the Firelink Shrine shortcut loop within Legacy Dungeons, but more on that in just a moment. In the open world, you will often see an area you can't quite reach because you can't get down or get up to it from wherever you're located. And after giving up and continuing on, you would likely come back to that area well down the road and look around, realizing you know exactly where you are. Elden Ring uses sightlines brilliantly to tease points of interest like mines, overworld bosses, or a unique landmark like an Everjail. So without any Ubisoftian
and in a Petersonian sense,
towers or map markers clogging up the UI, the player is naturally drawn to explore the full map and unveil all of her secrets. The world also generally has the way to unlock a new region or traverse a chasm, but there are almost always alternative routes that the player can either seek or stumble into. Hell, there are times when the game will transport you miles ahead, whether you want to or not. My favorite backdoor path is getting abducted by the Virgins, don't overthink it, and getting sucked into Volcano Manor. These days, I do this intentionally to get to Mount Gelmir. My first playthrough, it just happened because I was bad at the game. Elden Ring doesn't stop there, because instead of a map existing on a single plane, there is an entire subterranean world hidden below. Near the beginning of the game, I ran into a mausoleum near a minor Erd tree. I stepped on the platform, expecting the typical 5-second ride to a cave or a catacomb like I had encountered already. Instead, the elevator switch glowed a cosmic blue. The elevator started to accelerate, and the brick enclosure started to whip by. Then it opened up into a larger, darker structure, dimly lit by distant sconces. The large archways started to reveal architecture beyond, glimpses of spired, Gothic buildings. The descent continued, revealing a purple haze and gargantuan pillars in the distance. The orange glow of life flickered beneath as I realized there was an entire world beneath my feet. The architecture took shape as the elevator slowed, dropping me off seemingly miles below Limgrave, a lush underbelly to the world that felt vast enough topside. Torch in hand, I discovered the lost grace and explored the depths. These moments transcend a feeling that the world of Elden Ring is simply big. It feels old. It feels developed. It feels as though it exists outside of the contrivances of a video game. The strata of the world simultaneously feel organic and otherworldly, like a land formed by ancient gods, which, if I'm understanding Mr. R.R. Martin correctly, is pretty much what happened. Moving on from the overall world design, let's talk about the Legacy Dungeons. Stepping through the threshold of a Legacy Dungeon, watching Torrent vaporize even though he's such a good boy. So I had to Google this because I just wanted to gender Torrent appropriately because I'm an ally. And so I Googled it, came across this post. Is Torrent a boy horsey or girl horsey? Okay, first thing, actual answer. Melina says he when she refers to him, so I assume that. Cool. Second answer, it's a horsey. Also legitimate. Alright, let's go down here to the next thing. It's a goat. Responder doesn't like that, says no. And the original poster says, what horse has horns? To which someone replies, Torrent, which is an uncomebackable response. Then we have elk, or I'd say a small, well-kept yak, which I do like a lot. Medium goat here, that's why he's the goat. But this is the other thing I wanted to just bring up here. So this commenter says, I think he has balls. To which this other commenter responds, nah, no balls, that's why I Googled it. To which the original commenter comes back, they prob didn't model it since Melina calls him a he, but they still think he has balls. That's basically their premise there. Anyways, in legacy dungeons like Stormvale Castle, Raya Lucaria Academy, and Crumbling Farum Azula, levels loop back on themselves via shortcuts and the aforementioned vertical progression. This allows for that tightly wound design philosophy of the first act of Dark Souls 1 to come roaring back to life in a sprawling map like Elden Ring's. And the game repeats this magic trick over and over and over again through zones that feel impossibly complex and interconnected. In this way, Elden Ring eats its Breath of the Wild open world cake while having its Ocarina of Time classic dungeons too. In other words, these legacy dungeons are the closest thing to the traditional Souls map experience the game has to offer, with large, interconnected areas including shortcuts, looping elevators, and running through the rafters like a little banshee. Each legacy dungeon operates independently from the rest of the world. You may spend 10 hours in one of those self-contained mini-maps because the stratification we've been talking about in the open world only intensifies here. All of these details and content would be awe-inspiring on their own, but Miyazaki and team didn't stop there. Each legacy dungeon, each new area, each new building tells a story of age and complexity in the world design that adds a sense of scale beyond just size. Ruins of monolithic statues and columns are scattered across the lands between. These relics are neither remembered nor destroyed, instead scarring the landscape in silent protestation. The echoes of these lost civilizations show us that the Golden Order are not the oldest inhabitants, nor the native inhabitants of the world of Elden Ring. The alabaster statues clutching tablets evoke a forgotten knowledge that can never be reclaimed. But enough about the lore for now, we'll get to that soon enough. For now, it is important to recognize how unbelievably detailed the architecture and world design is, not only from the perspective of satisfying gameplay, but in building an atmosphere that tells the story of the characters and civilizations within. Pillar 3: Combat Evolved. Let's start with a quick history lesson to understand how the combat from Elden Ring came to be. King's Field, often cited as the granddaddy of all Souls games, is a classic dungeon crawler with tabletop RPG hit mechanics. It is slow, clunky, weighty, and honestly a little shitty by today's standards. Demon's Souls was the first true Souls game, and you can tell that because the word Souls has now been added to the title.
This is an aspen. You can tell that it's an aspen tree because of the way it is.
But the combat remained relatively simple and quite frankly undeveloped compared to later titles. If King's Field and Demon's Souls were the prototypes, Dark Souls was the first game to put it all together for that kind of deliberate, weighty, medieval fantasy combat done right. This game still feels incredibly clean and responsive after all these years. I am a Dark Souls 2 apologist. The clean and responsive gameplay may have taken a step back in the sequel to the original Dark Souls, but the mechanics and the innovation absolutely leapt forward. The magic system improved, power stancing was added, and the build variety compared to the first few games was exponentially larger. Bloodborne moved in the other direction, focusing instead on razor-sharp gameplay and blistering speed over build variety. The game is much less about builds than it is about the deadly dance, including trick weapons, the rally system, and a lack of shields and legitimate armor choices, all of which push the player to be a bloodthirsty, aggressive hunter. Before Elden Ring, Dark Souls 3 was what I would consider to be the culmination of From Software perfecting its combat system by learning from past experiences. It remains weighty, but the combat is fast and fluid. Build variety is there. From a purely Dark Souls perspective, this is the pinnacle of combat. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice said, "Forget all that, you get one sword, a grappling hook, shinobi prosthetics, and a parry that can deflect fucking lightning. Have fun out there." And after all that, we get to Elden Ring. Each time our weapon connects, each cast of gravity magic, each time we take damage, that necessary tactile feedback of feeling each action is not sacrificed for speed or complexity. Even the most anime of moves never feel floaty. True power stancing is back from Dark Souls 2, alongside a staggering variety of schools of magic that function differently from a build, utility, and visual perspective. The frenetic pace and the violence of Bloodborne lives in the DNA of Elden Ring. No amount of royal grandeur or gorgeous scenery can take away from the ferocity and nastiness of each combat encounter. The movement speed and world traversal freedom from Sekiro are here as well, albeit changed to fit the game's direction. Rather than a grappling hook, we have Torrent. And of course, Dark Souls 3 is the backbone, that beauty in chaos, the fluidity in the violence, the fact that you can
Do a flip!
poetry in motion. We went from this to this in just 11 years. Elden Ring not only encourages hybrid builds, as we discussed earlier, but hybrid combat styles, where players can mix and match weapons and attack types mid-battle. Look at this fight against Bale, flowing seamlessly between stagger-heavy incantations like the Black Blade, heavy pokes with the Rakshasa's Great Katana, comboing straight into massive burst damage with Fortisak's Lightning Spear, then back to a riposte with the Katana. If that doesn't look like a fun combat experience to you, I don't know what to tell you. There's so much to talk about here, I haven't even gotten to Ashes of War yet. My personal favorite is Carrion's Sovereignty, which straight up turns a regular sword into an outrageously huge magical greatsword, which does a vertical bonk attack with an optional horizontal sweep follow-up. At the risk of going down yet another list of Ashes of War, I'll stop there. But the way the game allows for Ashes of War to be integrated into standard movesets on top of being able to swap melee weapons, staves, and seals mid-fight allows for endless combat creativity. And of course, if you are getting mollywopped and or dog-walked by a boss, you can still summon real-like players like most games in the Soulsborne series. However, Elden Ring adds another option with Spirit Ashes. For the first time in the series, summons are a solo-friendly mechanic to deal with multi-boss encounters or just any sticking point in the game. This adds an element of strategy to boss and some open-world encounters, again going with the theme of increasing player freedom and providing yet another option to deal with tough sections. And Torrent isn't just a good girl/boy horse/goat. She also provides a viable mounted combat option for open-world encounters. The many encounterable dragons or knights cavalry are prime examples of mini-bosses who are susceptible to drive-by slashes. Stealth is a legitimate tactic in Elden Ring and allow for an additional layer of gameplay. Regardless of which combat style suits your fancy, Elden Ring naturally changes the rhythm and tenor with each encounter, giving players unique problems to solve and ample tools with which to solve them. That game of checkers we once had with an armored hollow in Undead Burg laid the foundation for the 4D galaxy chess that is Elden Ring's combat. Pillar 4. Mythos of the Lands Between.
What the dog doing?
When George R.R. Martin agreed to briefly stop blogging about the New York Giants for just a minute to finish his life's work before he dies of old age, fans of A Song of Ice and Fire rejoiced. Unfortunately for them, the Giants still suck, and Martin was instead flexing his creative chops on a new project, one that would turn into Elden Ring. Martin needs no introduction, and I won't dwell on his credentials, but for a writer of his stature to agree to work on a new fantasy video game IP alongside the genius of Hidetaka Miyazaki is something I still can't believe actually happened.
Finally, some good fucking food.
According to Martin himself, he was never slated to write the story of Elden Ring, but instead was tasked with creating the world in which these stories could take shape. And that depth of world building is what I believe truly separates Elden Ring from other great stories in gaming history. Martin's background and expertise lies in transforming real medieval history into high fantasy worlds that remain realistic and grounded in their political and societal dealings. He is also a master of understanding human motivation and positioning, which allows for chess games of cause and effect wherein complicated, realistic character desires lead to deeply personal consequences, intended or not. Martin's involvement also explains why every fucking character has the same name, all of which start with one of his initials. The G's, such as Godfrey, Godwin, Godric, and Godefroy. The R's, Radagon, Radon, Ronnie, Rykard, and Renala, just to name a few. And the M's, Marika, Melania, Mikella, Moog, Morgott, and Melina.
Godfrey's evil twin Godefroy, that's like if your mother named you William and your brother William.
And while Mr. Thrones built the prehistory and the lore of the land, Miyazaki and the veteran staff from the Soul series brought that world to life. Their MO of telling the game's beautiful and horrific story through item descriptions, environmental storytelling, and the odd character dialogue remains very much intact. Moments like the expulsion and persecution of the traveling merchants are not directly explained to us. Instead, we first get a sense for this tragedy from Merchant Kale very early in the game.
My people, wanderers all have long been spurned by the grace of gold, which is why we cannot settle, but instead are forced into this pitiful, unceasing journey. We have a saying, we wanderers, lament not your solitude, expect no sympathy, no regard, nothing. But if anyone dares harm us, show them no mercy. That is our code, so to speak. Just the way we are, deeply unforgiving.
It honestly sounds like typical Souls-like melancholic regret. The classic, woe is me, the world is ending, would you like to join my covenant type of dialogue. Dozens of hours into the game, we make it to the subterranean shunning grounds beneath the golden capital city of Leyndell. In this macabre atrium, we find piles of corpses of nomadic merchants who were buried underground at the orders of Queen Marika's Golden Order for their heresy against the gods. That same throwaway line from the first hour of the game comes back to life with this appalling reveal of the gods' brutality. In a hidden room only accessible through frenzied attacks, the description of the nomadic merchants' finery reads, "These merchants once thrived as the Great Caravan, but after being accused of heretical beliefs, their entire clan was rounded up and buried alive far underground. Then they chanted a curse of despair and summoned the flame of frenzy." These stories, ranging from world-altering events like the revelation that Radagon and Marika are one and the same person, triumphs and failures like that of Dialos, who finally found his way by looking after some simple jars, are nearly all missable. And I believe the fact that they are missable is not just a way to incentivize the player to explore every nook and cranny in the lands between, but also a deliberate choice to allow players to roleplay in a more significant way. Role-playing elements in most games come down to a few fundamental, often binary choices. Stormcloaks or the Empire in Skyrim. Kill or spare some alien in Mass Effect. Doing something heinous that Clementine will definitely remember. But there is something common in all of those examples that is not necessarily true of the fundamental choices in Elden Ring. They are forced on the player. Even in the Skyrim example, where there is nothing forcing the player to join either side, it is such a major part of the story that the player would need to willfully ignore every garden NPC in every major city to avoid the choice. In Elden Ring, players have the meta choice to care or not care about the story. There is nothing stopping you from flying through the game, skipping dialogues, and disregarding every single cryptic clue as to where the next NPC encounter can be found to keep this questline alive. I think that is a powerful design choice that goes beyond the typical moral dilemma games might throw our way. Players who don't care about the lore aren't forced to care about it, and those who do get a deeper sense of satisfaction by paying close attention and earning those moments of insight are able to do so and peek behind the veneer of the game's obtuse cutscenes. And the stories are there to be found. While I won't continue to rattle off examples or recap the main story, there are other channels who have already done that work brilliantly. I will end by saying that Elden Ring, much like Bloodborne, would be an all-time classic based on the gameplay and world design alone. It is such a well-made video game for the sake of being a fun video game that it would have been enough, but it wasn't enough for Miyazaki and Martin. They and their team built a world that inspires awe, horror, and melancholy, enriching the experience and taking Elden Ring from being just another great video game to potentially the greatest of all time. Honorable Mention 1. Atmosphere and Tone.
Oh, piss off. Marika's tits. You must be hungry.
I have mentioned the Breath of the Wild coming out of Plato's Cave moment as the modern standard of introductions to open world games. We run out, the triumphant music swells, and the air of adventure sets in. Elden Ring has a moment that is just as powerful, yet deceptive in its execution. After beating the hardest boss in gaming history, we come to a simple elevator, the kind with which we have become familiar through previous Souls games. We ride it up a quiet, brick enclosure, reminiscent of the one connecting Firelink Shrine to the New Londo ruins. Arising, we see an arched doorway ahead with pale flames illuminating the cold stone. We open the door to Limgrave. A golden ruin lies ahead, lush trees and crumbling castles. The Erd Tree lording over all, a faint mist lingering just above the plateau, and the chill of the somber score fades in amidst the rustling leaves. This world is not dying. It is not gray and decrepit. It feels almost as though it is a terrarium, frozen in time, like a snapshot of a once glorious civilization which now hangs on by a melancholic thread. And with that tone, our adventure begins. Yet it does not linger on that tone forever. Caelid is a hellacious, blood-red tundra that does not burn like a traditional hell. Instead, it is rotting and putrescent. Oh, I get it now. Distorted and revolting. Leyndell shows us the height of pristine power in Elden Ring, frozen out of time like a gift shop snow globe. The capital city remains defiantly beautiful as ash fills the streets. The subterranean cosmos of the Eternal Cities and the Siofra River cast projections of glintstones to replicate the outer worlds, making the underworld feel almost more open than the oppressive sky above. Mogwyn Palace, Farum Azula, Haligtree. The list of memorable environments in Elden Ring goes on. And with each new area, a new tone is established, but one that organically ties in with the story and the larger world of the lands between. Honorable mention 2. Endless replayability. I mentioned earlier that Elden Ring is both the longest and most replayable game in FromSoft's catalog. That replayability and value add is a huge reason for why I personally think Elden Ring has a legitimate GOAT claim. There is a 0.0% chance you have experienced all the game has to offer in a single playthrough, no matter how long you take unturning every stone and slamming into every brick to reveal illusory walls. The game has a somewhat defined recommended sequence, but nearly every sequence can be broken in one way or another. Players can rush Caelid early for an additional challenge. The Dectus Medallion can be skipped entirely by taking the alternate route in Liurnia. Even Stormveil Castle can be skipped. The game doesn't penalize you for doing any of this. In fact, it feels like it's begging you to try. And depending on where you go and who you meet, radically different quest options are available to the player. I, like the absolute shud I am, missed Ranni's questline entirely during my first playthrough. I was playing blind, so I didn't even know she existed as a character until much later when this significant character in the lore kept getting mentioned and I didn't know who she was. On the opposite side of the same double-edged sword, I stumbled ass backwards into the Lord of the Frenzied Flame ending without knowing what I was doing. It was genuinely terrifying, descending the Shunning Grounds to find the Frenzied Flame below. If it's not clear by now, this storyline had quite an impact on me. All of this, and I haven't even mentioned trying different builds, doing a challenge run, or even just role-playing as a different character to experience the game in a different light. And again, regardless of how thorough you think you were, it is guaranteed that subsequent playthroughs will lead you down a different corridor, or a hidden cave, or a branching level on top of a ladder that you simply never experienced before. From Software is willing to hide phenomenal content in places most players will never find. That choice pays dividends when each play session might hold a secret behind one of its doors. Honorable mention 3, Score and Sound Design. New channel record. Music is not going to be its own pillar in this one. But before you clutch your pearls, understand that the score and sound design for Elden Ring are still amongst the best in gaming history. There is just so goddamn much to talk about with this game that something brilliant was going to get the boot. Elden Ring understands that in a 60-plus hour-long game set in an open world, we don't need to be constantly bombarded with an epic battle theme while we harvest mushrooms. Instead, much of the soundtrack is restrained, even minimalist. This blends perfectly with the dynamic audio, as the whistling winds of an open plain blend with the serene melodies. The music in the world of Elden Ring does not proclaim itself boldly. It feels as though it is oozing from every corner of the map. Entering Caelid for the first time, the grating strings swarm over the player. Almost feeling like it is invading any sense of safety we enjoyed in Limgrave with a suffocating wall of dissonant sound. There is no melody to hum here. There are no gentle chords to ground you. The buzzing, strained strings resonate like a fever. And we understand exactly what kind of place we just walked into. If Limgrave's music tells us to go out and explore the world, Caelid's tells us in no uncertain terms that we should not have come here. The score doesn't prepare us for battle. It makes us want to turn around and never return. When the player does reach those climactic high points, composers Tsukasa Saito and Yuka Kitamura know exactly how and when to bring the thunder. I could be contrarian and list some of my other favorite tracks, but there is no musical height in Elden Ring that compares with the final battle against Radagon of the Golden Order and the Elden Beasts. As Radagon unfurls Marika's hammer, the tool that shattered the Elden Ring and may one day be used to reforge it, the opening theme pours through the screen. We may not fully understand the significance in our first playthrough, but the music is what provides the ultimate through line from opening cinematic to final battle. Pillar 5, the pinnacle of boss design and challenge.
Holy Jesus! What is that? What the fuck is that?
If music wasn't going to be the final pillar, as is tradition, what else could
use a power like the voice to murder his king and usurp his throne?
There's only one answer when it comes to Elden Ring: the bosses. First, some facts that don't care about your feelings. There are 238 boss encounters in the base game. Shadow of the Erdtree adds 83 more boss encounters for a total of 321. Vanilla Elden Ring boasts 72 unique bosses by my count, which excludes enemies like the Omen Killers, who are both bosses and regular enemies that can be found elsewhere in the open world. Shadow of the Erdtree has 42 unique boss designs, again being as conservative as possible when finding that number, leaving us with 114 unique bosses in the game to date. There are also 26 remembrance bosses, which can be considered the main bosses in terms of progression and lore. So if someone hits you with the Elden Ring reuses bosses too much argument, as will probably happen in the comments below, regardless of how much I'm about to debunk it right now, hit them back with the fact that there are more unique bosses in Elden Ring than there are in Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, and Bloodborne combined. You can also just hit them generally, but don't tell anyone I said that. Now let's talk about what actually matters, the quality of the bosses themselves. Humanoid bosses like Malenia are the purest form of combat prowess. They don't take up the full screen, and they are mostly confined to weapons and moves similar to what you could perform as well. Emphasis on mostly. I also love these encounters the most personally because they show the best of Elden Ring's boss AI, positioning themselves intelligently based on your movement, canceling combos based on player actions, and even punishing poorly timed heals. These bosses took what made other series standouts like Artorias, Freed, and Lady Maria and sharpened them to near perfection. Elden Ring also features more than its fair share of colossal bosses that actually do take up the full screen, and oftentimes more. Fire Giant, full-grown Falling Star Beast, and the Elden Beast all fit the bill. Rather than a duelist dance, these fights demand dead angling and finding blind spots in the monster's attacks. Massive area of effect damage, tail swipes, and even just rolling like a degenerate are all dangerous but manageable challenges here. Again, previous series standouts like Ludwig, the Guardian Ape, and Manus would find themselves right at home amongst these titans. Elden Ring proves yet again that it can elevate the formula to turn brilliant fights into something truly transcendent. Bosses like Aztel, Natural Born of the Void, fill another significant role in the boss lineup. A mandibled space skull that shoots purple orbs and lasers up your ass with big moth wings and flopping skeleton hands. Other foes like Sir Gideon Ofnir and the Red Wolf of Radagon operate similarly, creating a kind of bullet hell boss experience where the primary challenge is spacing and closing the gaps. Slipping in and out of danger and dealing damage between barrages of magic is as satisfying to learn and master as any duel. Beyond the combat of each boss type, of which there are many, the absolute spectacle of Elden Ring's bosses cannot be surpassed. Rykard comes to mind as a spectacle boss, as his boss arena in the heart of Volcano Manor is almost like a molten tomb for the Lord of Blasphemy. The Serpent Hunter is conspicuously available upon entering, and is the most effective tool to beat Rykard, Stormruler style. The fight is gorgeous to behold, with Phase 2 intensifying further with the addition of flaming projectiles and more dangerous melee attacks. While Dragon Lord Placidusax deserves praise in the spectacle department as well, my favorite setting for any boss battle is in Redmane Castle during the Festival of Radahn. Radahn's loyal soldiers hold a festival to honor the great general by calling warriors of renown across the lands between to put him down and end the scarlet rot affliction that consumes him. The music of the festival, somber chanting in the empty courtyard.
General Radahn, mightiest demigod of the Shattering, awaits you. Champions, prepare for battle! Defeat the general, claim glory, and grab that great rune!
As a sincere celebration of war and valor, there is nothing that quite matches the gravity of this moment in all of Elden Ring. Remember too, that for those of us who fought Radahn pre-patch, right after the game released, the aura this man lorded over the player base was off the charts. I was genuinely nervous as the pre-fight cutscene rolled. We enter the Wailing Dunes. Ghostly banners of war sway in the breeze. Corpses and shattered weaponry litter the battlefield. A massive bolt screams past our head with blinding fury. Then another. And another, as Radahn's massive silhouette begins to take form. A barrage of spears rain down like hellfire as we summon Torrent to sidestep the blows. Radahn reveals his dual-curved greatswords. His pursuit is relentless, and his attacks are sweeping and deadly. The Crimson Wasteland is stained with scarlet rot, coating everything in an eerie hue from the sands to the rolling fog above. And all the time, Radahn's onslaught continues, gliding on the mightiest of all steeds in the world of Elden Ring, Leonard. The general bombards us with purple gravity magic, alternatively drawing us closer or expelling us from his birth, slamming the earth in untethered rage as the barrage carries on ceaselessly. The scourge of the stars then soars to the cosmos in a single fell leap, only to careen back down to Earth like an asteroid burning up the atmosphere. The aggression from here increases to a fever pitch as additional gravity and meteor attacks keep the pressure on from all ranges. The boss is slain and the festival concludes. A deafening silence as shooting stars fill the air in protest, as a single falling star opens our way to Nokron, Eternal City. All of this atmosphere, detail, and love put into a single boss is the perfect example of what makes the bosses in Elden Ring beyond any of their peers from any game series. They are the pinnacle of a game studio's pursuit of the perfect boss, and this is as close as I've ever experienced to reaching that mark. And Promised Consort Radahn is so insane, I don't even know what to say. Just look at this. I really meant what I said in the intro. I was concerned that Elden Ring was going to be too good and ruin my life. Well, it turns out I was able to ruin my life all on my own, but I was right about the first part. Elden Ring has sold over 30 million copies, which is close to the combined total sales of Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, so it's not exactly a sleeper hit. But allow me to grandstand on my high horse's soapbox for just a minute. I still don't think Elden Ring gets the praise and attention it deserves. I feel like the game is so good, with so much detail and depth, that it is genuinely hard for people to truly digest and understand all the brilliant aspects layered into the game. And my favorite book is Moby Dick.
Move this man!
When Melville published his whaling epic in 1851, the critical and popular reception was mixed, but it was mostly confused. What the hell was this guy talking about? Why does the style change so much? Why do the characters talk about philosophy and God in between chapters where they literally just talk about whale biology? Without a doubt, my favorite critique came from the London Literary Gazette, who said about Moby Dick, it was a most uncomfortable book and sad trash. And to be fair, it isn't exactly a leisurely read. But that's because the greatest novel ever written in the English language isn't going to be as easy to read as Harry Potter or The Catcher in the Rye. And Elden Ring isn't going to be as easy to fully understand as a game like Skyrim or Halo. And to be extraordinarily clear, I love Harry Potter, The Catcher in the Rye, Skyrim, and Halo. I listed those for a reason, but there are levels to this shit. So when I say that Elden Ring is greater than the sum of its parts, and its parts are probably the best parts to ever do it, what else can I argue other than the game being the greatest of all time? When the design, atmosphere, combat, music, and replayability synergize to create the most complete package for an action RPG in video game history, I think the argument that Elden Ring is the greatest of all time will only get stronger as the full beauty and depth of the game age like a fine wine. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing, liking, and hyping the video. We are really focused on growing the channel right now, and your support means the world to us. Memberships are also available if you'd like to support the channel and have your name listed with the fine folks on the screen right now. Love y'all.